Hi, thank you for coming to the study for Maccabees 10 in our continued study with Maccabees. Before we start here, say a prayer here in hopes that everybody gets some message through here and they can learn more and how the Almighty Living God, Yahweh, Hashem, brings things to us, wisdom and things here. Well, this one chapter goes up to 17, so I'm going to try to keep on with these through the week because I've got some new things that I want to bring through and kind of get some more courses. So stay tuned. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, please hit the subscribe button if you like this. Hit the like, let me know that you like it, and we'll keep putting these out here and we'll get more things. If people are interested in it, give comments on what kind of things you would like to see, and I'll be glad to teach on those kind of things and give you more information as God gives me information here. Dear Almighty Living God, bless these people who are listening to this with the wisdom in the ears to hear, to learn about Maccabees and Jonathan, and today when he becomes a high priest, the understanding on that, and the things that they may learn, and help them be inspired to learn your word and inquire of those who have the mind so they can continue to grow and so that we can all come together and be blessed in your word and do as is righteous to you. May these people be blessed as they seek out your wisdom. Amen. And first Maccabees 10. In the 106th year, Alexander Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, landed and occupied Potomus. They welcomed him and he began to reign. When King Demetrius heard of it, he assembled a very large army and marched out to meet him in battle. Demetrius sent Jonathan a letter and peaceful words to honor him. For he said to himself, "Let us act first and make peace with him before he makes peace with Alexander against us. For he will remember all the wrongs we did to him and to his brothers and to his nation." So Demetrius gave him authority to recruit troops and equip them with arms and to become his ally. And he commanded that the hostages in the citadel should be released to him. Then Jonathan came to Jerusalem and read the letter in the hearing of the people and those in the citadel. They were greatly alarmed when they heard that the king had given him authority to recruit troops. But those in the citadel released the hostages to Jonathan, and he returned them to their parents. And Jonathan took up residence in Jerusalem and began to restore the city. He directed those who were doing work to build the walls and encircle Mount Zion with squared stones for better fortification, and they did so. Then the foreigners who were in the strongholds that Maccabees had built fled. All of them left their places and went back to their own lands. Only Beth Zor did remain some who forsaken the law and the commandments, for it was served as a place of refuge. Now King Alexander heard of all the promises that Demetrius had sent Jonathan, and heard of the battles that Jonathan and his brother had fought, of the brave deeds that they had done, and the troubles that they had endured. So he said, "Shall we find another such man? Come now, we'll make him our friend and ally." And he wrote a letter and sent it to him with the following words: "King Alexander, to his brother Jonathan, greetings. We have heard about you that you are a mighty warrior and worthy of our friend. So we have appointed you today to become the high priest of your nation, that you are called the king's friend, and that you are taken to our side and keep friendship with us." He also sent him a purple robe and a gold crown, So Jonathan put on the sacred vestments in the 7th month of the 160th year at the festival of booths. And then he recruited the troops and equipped them with arms in abundance. Then, when Demetrius heard of these things, he was distressed and said, "What is this that we've done? Alexander has overtaken us in forming a friendship with the Jews to strengthen himself. I also will write them words of encouragement and promise and honor and gifts, so that he may have their help." So he sent a message to them in the following words: "King Demetrius, to the nation of the Jews, greetings. Since you have kept your agreement with us, and you have continued your friendship with us, we have not sided with our enemies. We have heard of it and rejoiced. Now continue still to keep faith with us, and we'll repay you good for what you do to us. We will grant you many immunities, and give you gifts. I now free you and exempt all Jews from paying tribute and salt tax and crown levies. Instead of collecting the third of the grain and a half of the fruit from the trees that should he receive, I release them from this day and henceforth. I will not collect them from the land of Judah, or from the 3 districts added to it from Samaria to Galilee, from this day and for all time. Jerusalem and its environs and its tithes and its revenues shall be holy and free from tax. I shall also release the control of the citadel in Jerusalem and give it to the high priest, so that he may station it with men of his own choice to guard it. And everyone from the Jews was taken captive from the land of Judea in any part of the kingdom, I set free without payment. And I let all the livestock cancel also the taxes of their livestock. All festivals and Sabbaths and new moons and appointed days, and the 3 before the festival and the 3 after the festival. Let them be days of immunity and release for all Jews who are in my kingdom. No one shall have authority to extract anything from them or annoy them about any manner." So we've got so far, they decided they would help him out. They relieved them from the taxes, and they gave him the priestly garments, which came in the celebration of Tabernacles, which is the celebration of Yeshua coming back for his people and restoring God's kingdom. Let the Jews be enrolled in the king's forces and number 30,000 men, and let the maintenance be given to them that is due to all the forces of the king. Let some of them be stationed in the great strongholds of the king, and let some of them be put in positions of trust in the kingdom. Let their officers and leaders be of their own, and let them live by their own laws, just as the king commanded in the land of Judea. As for the 3 districts that have been added to Judea from the country of Samaria, let them be annexed to Judea, so that they may be considered to be under one ruler and obey no other authority than the high priest. But Ptolemais and the land of adjoining it I have given a gift to the sanctuary of Jerusalem, to meet the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. I also grant 15,000 shekels of silver yearly out of the king's revenue from the appropriate places, and all of the additional funds that the government officials have not paid, they did in the first years. They shall give from now on for the service of the temple. Moreover, the 5,000 shekels of silver that my officials have received every year from the income of the services of the temple. This is too counseled, because it belongs to the priests who minister there, and also to take refuge at the temple of Jerusalem or any of its precincts, because they owe money to the king or are in debt. Let them be released, and receive back all of their property in my kingdom. Let the cost of rebuilding and restoring the structures of the sanctuary be paid from the revenues of the king, and let the cost of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and fortifying it around, and the cost of rebuilding the walls in Judea also be paid from the revenues of the king. When Jonathan and the people heard these words, they did not believe or accept them, because they remembered the great wrongs that Demetrius had done in Israel and how much he had oppressed them. They favored Alexander because he had been the first to speak peaceable words to them, and they remained in all of his days. Now King Alexander assembled large forces and encamped opposite of Demetrius. The two kings met in battle, and the army of Demetrius fled, and Alexander pursued him and defeated them. He pressed the battle strongly until the sun set, and on that day Demetrius fell. Then Alexander set up the ambassadors to Ptolemy, king of Egypt, in the following message: Since I have returned my kingdom and have taken my seat on the throne of my ancestors and established my rule, for I have crushed Demetrius and gained control of our country. I met him in battle, and he and his army were crushed by us, and we have taken our seat on the throne of his kingdom. Now, therefore, let us establish friendship with one another, and give me now your daughter as my wife, and I will become your son-in-law and will make gifts to you and her in keeping with your position. Ptolemy the king replied and said, Happy was the day that you returned to your land of your ancestors and took your seat on the throne of the kingdom. And now I'll do for you as you wrote, but meet me at Ptolemais so that we may see one another, and that I will become your father-in-law as you said. So Ptolemy set out of Egypt. He and his daughter Cleopatra came to Ptolemais in 162nd year, and King Alexander met him in Ptolemy, gave his daughter Cleopatra in marriage, and celebrated the wedding at Ptolemais with a great pomp, as kings do. So that's interesting. I not read that section before, but that tells you how King Alexander the Great became involved with Cleopatra, and they became together, and the rest of history you've seen with that as you studied in history class. I didn't know how that actually came together from there. Then King Alexander wrote to Jonathan, Come and meet him, so that he went with pomp to Ptolemais and met the two kings. He gave them and their friends silver and gold and many gifts, and he found favor with them. A group of malcontents from Israel, renegades, gathered together against him to accuse him, but the king paid no attention to them. The king gave orders to take off Jonathan's garments and clothe him in purple, so they did. The king also seated him at his side and said to his officers, Go out with him in the middle of the city and proclaim that no one is going to bring charges against him with any manner, and let no one annoy him for any reason. When his accusers saw the honor that was paid with him in accordance to the proclamation, they saw him clothed in purple, they all fled. This the king honored him and enrolled him among his chief friends, and made him a general and governor of the province. And Jonathan returned to Jerusalem in peace and gladness. In the 165th year, Demetrius, son of Demetrius, came from Crete to the land of his ancestors. When King Alexander heard of it, he was greatly distressed and returned to Antioch. And Demetrius appointed Apollonius the governor of Colestra, and assembled a large force and encamped against Jamina. And then he sent the following message to the high priest Jonathan. You are the only one to rise up against us, and I have fallen into ridicule and disgrace because of you. Why do you assume authority against us in the hill country? If you now have the confidence in your forces, come down to the plain to meet us, and let us match strength with each other, for I have with me the power of the cities. Ask and learn who I am and who the others that are helping us. People will tell you that you cannot stand before us, for your ancestors were twice put into flight in their own land, and now you'll not be able to withstand my cavalry and such an army in the plain. There is no such stone or pebble or place to flee. Then Jonathan heard the words of Polynices, and his spirit was aroused. He chose 10,000 men and set out from Jerusalem, and his brother Simon met to help him. He encamped before Joppa, but the people of the city closed its gates, for Polynices had a garrison in Joppa. So they fought against it, and the people of the city became afraid and opened the gates. Jonathan gained possession of Joppa. Grab me a drink here. Then Apollonidas heard of it. He mustered 3,000 cavalry in a large army, and went to Azotus as though he were going further. At the same time he advanced into the plain, for he had a large troop of cavalry, and put confidence into it. Jonathan pursued him to Azotus, and the armies engaged in battle. Now Apollonidas had secretly left 1,000 cavalry behind him. Jonathan learned that there was an ambush behind him, for they surrounded his army and shot arrows at his men from early morning until late afternoon. But his men stood fast, as Jonathan had commanded, and the enemy's horses grew tired. Then Simon brought forth his force and engaged in the flanks in battle, for the cavalry was exhausted, and they were overwhelmed by him and fled, and their cavalry was dispersed into the plain. They fled to Azotus and entered Beth Dagon, the temple for their idol, for safety. But Jonathan burned Autosis and the surrounding towns and plundered them, and the temple of Dagon and those who had taken refuge in it he burned with fire. The number of those who fell by the sword and burned alive came to 8,000. Then Jonathan left there and encamped against Azekon, and the people of the city came out to meet him with great pomp. He and those around him returned to Jerusalem with a large amount of booty. And King Alexander heard of these things and honored Jonathan still more, and he sent him a gold buckle, such as the custom to give to the king's kinsmen. He also gave him Ekron and its inversions in all of his environs in his possession. And then next time we'll go on to Maccabees 11, which is about Jonathan's diplomacy. I considered going through it, but it's about as long as 10, so that would take us another 20 minutes. With that, thank you for Charlie and these people who came by to visit here. Thank you for learning Maccabees with us, and share with your friends, and enjoy, and hope you enjoy your study of God and keep in His Word. God bless.